All right then, well, thank you folks for coming back, and we have two wonderful presenters to close out our day. Our first presenter will be Dr. Josie Schafer, and Dr. Josie Schafer joined the University of Nebraska, Omaha as the director of the Center for Public Affairs Research in 2018. Dr. Schafer joined the Center for Public Affairs Research because of its strong history and positioning as the go-to source for expert data and analysis to inform state and local policy and public and nonprofit management in Nebraska. Recent projects led by Dr. Schafer include the Entrepreneurship in Nebraska Report, data and analysis of the UNO Workforce Development Task Force, the Nebraska Community Foundation, Youth Survey, policy analyses for the Planning Committee of the Nebraska State Legislature, and serves as the principal investigator of the Nebraska Rural Transit Project for UNO. Should also mention that Dr. Schafer is involved in a statewide project with the Nebraska State Unit on Aging, along with the UNO Department of Gerontology, to be able to gain an understanding about the needs of aging Nebraskans. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my colleague and friend, Dr. Josie Schafer.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Thank you all. Good afternoon. So excited to be here talking about this extremely important topic, not just in Nebraska, but everywhere. If I walk, is that okay a little bit? Okay, just checking. As Julie was mentioning, I'm the director of the Center for Public Affairs Research. Our mission is to collaboratively produce and disseminate high-quality public scholarship on a range of topics. People are always really surprised by the range of topics we'll work on, from aging to economic development, but behind all of that is good data and research that you can trust, you can use and apply to make more informed policy decisions here in Nebraska. As Julie mentioned, working a lot on aging right now. We'll be sharing this data and more on aging coming soon with the state area on aging. So really excited to start to dig in today. 4 major points to take away from this presentation. I like to give away the punchline before I show you anything, but we'll really evidence how I know these and why I know these. Nebraska is actually a comparatively young state. I think people are surprised to hear that. But compared to other states, comparatively young. But there is a wide dispersion of aging across the state of Nebraska. So that you will see some areas, I'll give that away too, the non-metro areas of the state, the rural areas of the state are a little bit older to start with and aging more rapidly than the metro areas of the state. We also have a strong demographic and economic position for our aging adults here in Nebraska. Really important that we are secure, safe, healthy. Right? We have all the basic necessities, certainly some population in need, but a strong position, again, compared to other states. But there's going to be a lot of competition to support the aging population. With all of those other states maybe aging a little bit more rapidly than us, plus a density of population, there's going to be some competition for those folks to help support our aging population in the state. So we'll think a little bit about what that means for the future. Before I dig too far in on aging specifically, just a brief overview of the population trends in this state. Since 2010, Nebraska's population has increased 7.4%. Nebraska's population has increased 7.4%. That's actually a little bit up from what we projected. So Nebraska is growing faster than we thought it would between 2010 and 2020. That's great news, and I'm going to show you a little bit about how that trend is working out. But 69 counties have lost population. So that growth is pretty concentrated in certain areas of the state. And here you can see the red is growth, the dark gray is loss of population, and you will see many of those counties have lost population, and those metro areas in the state, and Columbus over there, holding strong, are the places where we're growing. So that strong population growth, this is for all ages, statewide, is mostly concentrated in urban areas of the state. A trend that's been going back for a long time. There are 3 ways to grow a population. Natural change, that's births minus deaths, so having strong birth rate, international migration, and domestic migration. What I've done here is I've shown all 3 together, but I've sorted by the rate of natural change. We love when Nebraska stands out. We love when Nebraska beats the pack, and here they did.
our rate of natural change, so births minus deaths, is positive and strong compared to most other states. So I like to tell people what that means. Most people in Nebraska are Nebraskans. They were born here. That's that strong rate of natural change. That's what's pushing our population up. In fact, we see a trend where folks leave those rural counties, come to those urban counties, then they have that strong positive birth rate, having families in Omaha and Lincoln and Columbus, and that's driving our growth. That 7.4% is mostly Nebraskans having more Nebraskans. We also see we're a little bit positive for rate of international migration. That's people coming from other countries. This is 2020 to 2021. Because of the COVID-19 impact, it was pushed a little bit, but this is about normal. It's about 1% per year, folks coming from other locations, a little lower in 2021. And then you will see we are negative for our rate of domestic migration. Again, not a ton of people, don't get too worried. They don't leave in huge droves every year, but we are losing people to other states rather than gaining people from other states, which is again why I can tell you most people in Nebraska are Nebraskans. So let's get into our aging adult population. Nebraska's high rate of natural change, as I showed you in that last one, having a little over 2 kids per year, make us a comparatively young state. This is the percent of the population 65 years and older. I'll mostly use 65 years and older as the benchmark. Sometimes I'll show you 75 years and older, but here's kind of where the Census Bureau defines an aging adult for most of the time. And this is in 2020. So you can see about 16% of our population is age 65 and older. Go north, a little bit older. Go east, a little bit older. Go west, a little bit older, except for Colorado, only about 14% of their population age 65 and older. Going south, we're all about even. So let's just take another state, look over there, poor Maine, 21%. Texas, a little bit younger, but still not that young, 13%. Florida, 21%, 65 and older. Youngest state in the country right now is Utah, at 11%, age 65 and older. Their strong rate of natural change there. So comparatively young is what I would suggest. Pretty on par with a lot of the Midwest. Definitely some states higher, definitely some states lower. This is from the Census Bureau looking at that over time. When I say comparatively younger, I think it's important to talk about just how much of this population is aging. So this is, the blue line is age 65 and older, the green line is age 85 and older. Here we are just out, they just released this, so I'm pretty sure that red line is 2022, and then they project out. Because the baby boomers are right, some of them have crossed that 65, we haven't crossed all of the baby boomers across that 65. Over 60 million. Over 60 million right now are age 65 and older. Right, so 16% of our not too dense population, not that many folks, but nationally, some of these big states with these big percent of the population age 65 and older, that's what's driving that number. And you can see that projection as those baby boomers cross that line over 65 just keeps going up. It's more than double right now than it was in 2012. The age 65 and older population nationally is more than double than it was in 2012. 2020 was the first year here in Nebraska we had more persons 75 and older than we did 5 and older. So we are really just at the cusp of an aging population. Now, aging population, as we know, pros and cons, but things change when the percent of the population changes into a new demographic group. So we are just at the cusp in Nebraska and nationally of feeling this aging boom. Just a quick map again from the Census Bureau. This is every county. We're going to look at the counties in Nebraska more closely, but by median age, 35 or less, mostly Utah, California, some of those southwest states. 50 or more, you'll see mostly concentrated on that east. I think we used to call it like the Rust Belt. At Nebraska, you'll start to see some of the diversity in aging across the state. In many counties, over 10% of the population is 75 and older. So I jumped up on you, right? This is full into aging. Over 10% of the population is 75 and older. That's a pretty large demographic chunk of the population in a pretty small age range, 75 and over. So red here is high, the dark gray is low, but you'll even see the middle there, the white, those are all about 10, 11, 12%. So you can start to really see that variation across the state in our aging population. So if you go to Douglas and Sarpy County, if you can see them 5%, 4% of the population is 75 and older in Sarpy County, much less. Come halfway across over there and you can see 13%, 10%, pretty sure that's called 22%. So some counties really high, and this is that highest age bracket we tend to study, 75 and older. Our metro counties are much younger than our non-metro counties. That's a pretty good thing because that's where the density of population is too. So we're not talking about tons of people out here, but the percentage of that population, 75 and older, is much larger. So let's talk about demographic and economic position of aging adults. Everybody just take a second, think about what a healthy, happy aging adult looks like in your mind. Can I call out in here, is that okay? What are some things they might have? Good house? It's an easy one. Can they drive? Maybe, or they can at least get around, right? Maybe they live with family, right? Some security in that. They might have good sources of income to pay for that housing, right? That's what I'm talking about when I say the demographics of aging. What are those factors that mean an aging adult can live in place, happy, healthy, securely? So we're going to look at a couple of those demographics. We're going to look at them over time. So this is percent of the population 65 years and older across several demographics. I'll talk through each of them. And I compared them 2010 to 2020. What I can say from this is I think aging adults are a little bit better off today than they were in 2010. I think aging adults are in a strong economic position compared to where they were in 2010. Some have gone up, some have gone down. They tend to go the way we want them to. But it's important to think about these factors as well as several other factors that might be influencing their lifestyle. So compared to 2010, more 65 and older live with grandchildren. I just think that's great for everybody, right? Secure, healthy, not alone, safe, family, networks, connection. We see fewer 65 and older in poverty. The rate has gone down. It was 8.6, it's 7.8. That's enough of a difference to go something good here is happening to make persons 65 years and older secure. I'm going to come back to in poverty though. Still 8% is a lot, right? And we're going to see a lot of dispersion across the state on that particular point too. Bachelor's degree or higher just tends to mean they had a better job, they might have more retirement savings, they might be thinking a little bit more about some of those negative influences that can come at them in old age. You'll see that up. The percent employed, 22% of persons 65 and older are employed in Nebraska. I call this a positive. I mean, I assume they want to create income, but it could also be a negative, right? Working later in life, a lot of stress, maybe healthcare problems, maybe they have to work, so they might be in less safe jobs because they need more income. Can certainly be a stressor as well as a positive, right? It's also a social connection and an opportunity to have some fun out there. I'll talk about that a little more too. Housing cost is 30% or more of income. That's a standard benchmark we use to say someone's cost burden. So we look at how much income they have. So some work, some don't, but they have Social Security income, retirement income, maybe governmental sources of income. So we look at income compared to what it costs for them to live in their house. If that income to cost is over 30%, they're cost burdened. What happens when someone's cost burdened on housing? Well, we need housing, right? So what are the things we have to give up to secure that housing? maybe some healthcare purchases, maybe healthy food choices, maybe transportation access, other sort of stress relieving recreational amenity things. Those have to go away because I have to own my house. So that number is down. It's not down a ton, and I can tell you that's pretty high actually compared to some other states. Housing costs in Nebraska are booming, and we also see a lot of older homes, and older homes sometimes have some of those housing problems, right? Things that might make it less safe or more difficult to get around the home, especially for an aging population. So that one, yeah, it's down. So they're more people are more secure in their homes than they were in 2010, but it's certainly something to look at and think about. Civilian veteran, that is down. I just mentioned that one. They come with a lot of, veterans tend to have better healthcare benefits and retirement packages and things like that, so they're pretty secure into old age. But I will say, even though it's down from 2010, which is a result of all sorts of policies at the federal level for getting people into the armed forces, it's still pretty high. Nebraska still has a strong percent of the population that went into the armed forces. Percent living alone, it's a chunk. It's about half, right? 45.9% is about half of the population, just 65 and older, right? Not 75 and older, living alone. I think that has maybe some pros for them, but also some cons in terms of safety, affordability too. But we do see that down. Makes sense. We see more living with grandchildren or family. They live in the same house as last year. Population 65 and older in Nebraska is not very mobile. 93.3% live in the same house. Now, do people move? Absolutely. And we don't capture everyone, but it's a nice measure just to say, why did you move? Why'd you move? We can also tell you where they moved. But they're pretty stable. Kind of interesting, again, compared to other states. This population 65 and older sometimes moves into institutional settings like a nursing home or a retirement living community. So that would be, right, so we see our folks staying where they were, which tends to be single family houses here in Nebraska. So that's kind of interesting. They're a little less mobile. We also tend to think about folks around this age group, well, now I'm going to go buy the kids and retire, retire somewhere else maybe, go to warmer weather. Nebraskans are aging in place for the most part. It's an interesting population to study from an economic development perspective. We want people to age in place, especially in rural Nebraska. We want everyone to stay here in Nebraska, but that population 65 and older, we certainly want to feel comfortable in their homes for as long as they want to be in their homes. We're seeing that. It's the exact same rate, I double checked that I didn't type it wrong, from 2010. So they have not become more mobile or less mobile. Nebraskans tend to be in Nebraska. The percent that are white alone, not Latino, not some other race or person of color, that has gone down. We are a diversifying state. We're a diversifying state across every age group. Older Nebraskans tend to be more white than other age groups. So if we compare this to under 5, that group gets more diverse faster. But they are less diverse than they were just a couple of years ago. Another thing that, not good, not bad, but means the institutions and systems that we have in place should be changing along with our population. And the percent insured is just down a little bit. I would say that's not a significant change, but an important one.
A question just came in. It says, do you have any data on the percentage of aging individuals that are homeless? This individual works in a shelter and states that it seems to be on the rise.
Sure. So we definitely know we know some things about housing. Homeless persons are very hard to count. They did do some of that in the 2020 census. So some of those age variables for the 2020 census are not available, but could certainly give a good estimate of that, right? We can look at in poverty and not in housing that we know about, so we could get there. I would say the percent of that is probably up. I totally agree with what they're seeing in practice in that housing has risen tremendously, housing prices. And so absolutely, it's gonna force some people into alternative housing situations. We're gonna look at poverty as well, and that can help to explain some of that. I mentioned that I would talk about that person's over 65 employed. I just think this is really important to point out as we get into the future. One, we have a really tight labor market. Has anybody heard about labor force shortages in Nebraska? Right, we can't have a conversation and not talk about that. And they're correct. Many people are in the labor force, many people are employed, there's lots of jobs open. I talk a lot about workforce issues. So what does that mean for our aging population? Nebraska has the #1 rate in the country for people 55 and older in the labor force. So I like to say everybody in Nebraska works, you can't retire. You're not even allowed to do it. So, but I think we need to think really carefully about what that means, right? If the labor force is that tight, maybe people feel they have to stay in the labor force, maybe longer than they want to, maybe at some health cost to them, maybe not. That's why I look at that percent in bachelor's degrees. Those folks tend to have the more sit-down, relaxing jobs that they can work a little bit longer. But working in manufacturing and being 55 and older, 65 and older, that's a lot of stress on a body. So those are the kind of things I think we still need to dig a little deeper into to understand, are people choosing to work longer or are people having to work longer? Talk about inflation, right? If prices are higher, what do you feel you have to do to be able to maintain all of those necessities? We have a very tight labor market. That also means it might be very hard for people to leave the labor force. It might also make it difficult to attract people to come here and take care of our aging workforce, which I'll show in a little bit as well. This is the poverty rate. This was another demographic I said I'd come back to. For 65 and older, by county here in Nebraska. This again, you see a real dispersion in these rates. A little bit smaller, I apologize. Again, overall about 8%, it was right under 8% in poverty. Could be high, could be low, important to think about. But if you go to some of these darker gray counties, the rates go up. 16%, 15%, 13%, 11%, 9%, above that rate. Again, tend to be smaller counties, rural counties or non-metro counties, but the rates go way up. So sometimes looking at that sort of overall picture for Nebraska sort of obscures this deeper, darker secret that more folks are living in poverty. The poverty rate, if you average it out, metro versus non-metro, is absolutely higher for 65 and older in non-metro counties. I think a lot of people too, just to say, think about poverty as an urban problem, right? Oh, it's in the city. No, the poverty rates for 65 and older are much higher in rural Nebraska than urban Nebraska. Coming to this last point, competition to support the aging population is going to be strong. So yes, we have a generally healthy, secure, safe, affordable life for persons 65 years and older in Nebraska. I mean, that's probably going to be better on a billboard than a lot of other things we write, right? You can age in place safely here in Nebraska. I feel that that is true. There are definitely pockets in some counties where it's a little bit harder to do, but you can have a good life and age in place here in Nebraska. So will everyone run to Nebraska to support our aging population? Don't know about that. This is another slide with a lot of information on it. This comes from more of my workforce presentations than aging presentations, but it's something really important to point out. Walk you through it. So scattered little dots are industries or occupational groups that folks work in. Office, food prep, computer and math, life and physical science. And all I do, so over here you have how many people working in it, and up here you have how much folks make. So someone making food prep makes barely $10,000 a year, while someone in computer math computer and math makes almost 75,000 a year, on average, at the median, in fact. So then I just put red lines, about 41,000, that's the median in earnings for occupations in here. And then this is just how many people work in it. Lots of people work in it, few people work in it. Then, just because I like to make things complicated, the size of the bubble is projections for growth in that industry. How many people are we going to need to add to that industry? And the ones I really want to point out, healthcare support. This is like in an aging home where someone might help you out or come to your house and help you out. So not a nurse, registered nurse, health technician or technologist, healthcare support. And then there is health diagnosing and technicians up on top. Those are big bubbles. That's the main point here. The healthcare industry is booming. We all know exactly why the healthcare industry is booming. Over, how many people was it? Some 70 million people are 65 and older right now and expected to grow in that number. That's a lot of people that are going to be using that healthcare industry. So we, here in Nebraska, it's about 13% for healthcare support. National, from the Department of Labor projections, 23% growth. And this is just between 2020 and 2030. 10 years, 23% growth. I think they're probably closer than we are, right, in healthcare support, and they're just around 10% in the number of doctors, nurses, and technicians that are going to be needed to support this aging population everywhere. We need them. Other states need them. Other states might need them a little bit more. What do we do when we want, if you're trying to hire someone to come work for you, and they're deciding between two jobs, what can you do to get them to come here?
Hiding bonus.
Yeah, pay them more. Sorry, I'm going to stick around. So here what I've done, I've just looked at median wages for those three groups compared to other states. It's a lot of information, but what I can tell you is we don't pay great. We don't pay great, right? And this is statewide. So if we're trying to pull these folks, it's going to be a little bit harder, and I would say even at the higher end. So we tend to have a lot of low-wage workers. We have more low-wage workers than high-wage workers in the state of Nebraska. So lower wage, more jobs, we pay a little bit more competitive. For those high-wage jobs, we don't pay very competitively. We don't have as many. Sorry for jumping around. So healthcare support, we do okay. We don't do great. No one's going to run here to take healthcare support jobs. By the way, 23,335. That person that helps you so intimately, so closely, so importantly that you can't live without, 23,000. I have little kids, so I think about what early childhood care workers make. Also, someone I can't live and work without, we pay them terribly. Anyway, different topic, different day. But it's going to be really, really difficult, one, to get people here in Nebraska to go into those jobs. Why would I do that to myself? And then it's going to be really hard to grab these workers from other states because there's a booming aging population just a couple states over, and they'll pay me a lot more, right? I know, don't share this slide. It's not going to help. Health diagnosing and treating practitioners, those are your doctors. Like I said, not competitive, 60,000. Yeah, there's some range in types of doctors and all sorts of things. There's a pretty big dispersion on that one. Not competitive. And then health technologists and technicians, 36.5. Not particularly competitive. And this is just in the region. Remember, it's the coasts that are young and old. So, just one more. Like I said, sometimes these medians and aggregate things sort of obscure what's going on across the state. This is the percent that just work in health diagnosing and treating practitioners, so your doctors mostly, and how many, the percent of the population that's working in that field across the state. 0% is that dark gray. There are many counties that don't have anybody working there in those roles. 1%, 1%, 2%, 1%, 4%, 3%, right? So again, maybe those areas of higher poverty, more likely to have health challenges, more likely to have disabilities as a result of generational or systemic poverty, they don't have the folks to help them just in those places where they live, right? So as a state as a whole, very strong position in terms of demographics for our aging population. But there are challenges statewide that are important to remember as we think about elder justice and making sure our aging population has safe, affordable, secure lifestyles here in Nebraska. That is all I have. I'm a fast talker, I apologize, but happy to take
This is great.
tons of questions, if we have them.
You know, it's a quick question, so it's interesting, Josie, when you talk about this wonderful boom in the aging population.
Yes.
It is a wonderful boom.
Yes.
And so, you know, the opportunities when you talk about particularly in Nebraska with the healthcare workforce, one wonders, are there opportunities for older adults who might be, go through retraining, in terms of supporting some of that industry,
The
as an example?
The opportunities are great. The opportunities are absolutely wonderful. I do think we have to think, so retraining, retooling, reskilling in a state with a short labor market, right?
Right.
I think about it, there's no more pickups. Everyone's working, right, across all these groups. Everybody's already working. Who else will I get to work? Yes, labor force participation rate of age 55 plus is high, but hey, there's still there's about half of that group that can come work for us too. I do think it's important to think about what industries do we want to retool, reskill, and support folks in, right? High stress is not gonna be great over a certain age. Being on your feet all day is not great for anybody, but over a certain age. So thinking about those, looking really carefully at Nebraska Department of Labor, what's open and how we can get folks there comfortably, quickly, easily, that is one of our only sources of growing the labor force here in Nebraska. I think that's absolutely true.
Thank you.
Why do you think we're so successful in having everybody employed at all ages?
Well,
Do you want to repeat that question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, so why do I think we're very good at having folks at all ages employed? So there's a couple things going on. So one, we're not a very dense state, so everybody kind of takes on the burden of knowing to work. I think it even becomes sort of cultural. Everybody in Nebraska works. It's sort of a normal thing to think about and talk about. That we have that high density of low wage jobs is not all bad. They're great jobs to get into the labor market and hopefully move up from. We want more high wage than low wage jobs. There's a multiplier effect to high wage jobs, right? If I make more money, what do I do with it? I spend it, I keep low wage folks employed. But low wage is a great way to enter that workforce and start getting involved. And we have lots of those jobs. So I think we also have a really high rate of those 16 and under that work. So, right, people getting into the labor force, into that full low wage sector. Really good culture of work and work ethic. I think it's very normal here. And I'll say too, right, the business climate is sort of positive and pro work in such a way that it keeps folks employed. We're not very high wage. I think this is important to point out. Labor force participation rate of folks in poverty. So that means I work. I've even looked at work full-time year-round, and I'm in poverty. I actually was working on LB 1024, a bill to support North and South Omaha with some ARPA funds. And their labor force participation rate of folks that work full-time year-round is over 50% and in poverty, right? So not a lot of high-wage work, but a lot of work available. So I think a lot of people sort of get on the work cycle early and just stay on it for a long time.
Next question is there information on the number of people with more than one job?
Okay, yes, they're kind of statewide. So most of this data you saw today comes from the US Census Bureau. The American Community Survey, which is a very rich survey that talks to lots of folks, so I can estimate things out to the county level. The current population survey is very focused on the workforce. Very focused on the workforce, but we tend to not be able to go geography smaller. I work with that one a lot. Yes, we have a high rate of folks in more than one job. It's not necessarily a good thing. You know, gig economy is strong, but it puts a lot of stress on folks.
So as a follow-up question, Josie, is some of that data available on the CPAR website?
Absolutely. Jump back. We make a lot of this data very publicly available. We want you to have it. cpar.unomaha.edu. We make all sorts of fun interactive dashboards. Sometimes we just throw up Excel files. Anything we're pulling or looking at, we want you to have access to as well. So great place to go. And then if any of these other kind of questions pop into someone's mind, we want you to have that data. Good place to go. See if it's available. If not, let me know.
So Jen, you mentioned that baby boomers,
Yeah.
which I think the peak of the baby boom is retiring this year.
Yeah, we're there. That's that
Okay.
cusp.
But they're continuing to work. Are there
Yes.
reasons why they're continuing to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has something to do, right? Getting a bachelor's degree puts you into those high wage jobs, and those high wage jobs tend to be less physical. And so you can work a little bit longer, a little bit more comfortably. I think that's part of it, right? The change of the workforce, right? That wasn't true just a couple years ago even, right?
Are they working by necessity?
I
They have
think-
a reputation as poor savers.
Well, yeah, the baby boomers. So income is absolutely the challenge, right? I think some of it is cultural, but some of it is definitely income, right? So not having the savings, not having the retirement income, not having second sources of income, that is going to be a challenge. And right, people just live longer. So then you know, I've got to make this little bit go longer. And so yes, I think that's largely what drives it. But I think in Nebraska, it's not all that. I think there is a little bit of that culture of work here
Okay.
too. The largest reason someone leaves the labor force is retirement, though. So it's not that nobody stops working. They'll leave, they'll retire at some point, but they tend to work a little longer here. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Like I said, stop into our website or always feel free to reach out. Happy to help.
Very good. Dr. Schafer, thank you very much. A very powerful presentation. And as a gerontologist, all these numbers and the growth of the aging population, could life be any better, right? All right then. Well, our next speaker I'll introduce in just a second. I just want to remind folks that we really need you to complete the evaluation of this training. Your completion of that evaluation helps as we make plans for the 13th Elder Justice Training that'll happen next year. So please take time to do that. Also offering ideas about potential speakers. Again, your suggestions are what drive the agenda. A couple of other things I just want to briefly mention. If you are seeking CEUs as a nurse, remember you need to complete the evaluation, and you also need to complete the post-assessment quiz. And then if you're an attorney seeking a CLE, you'll also be asked to complete the evaluation after the training. Just want to one last time express our gratitude to those people who have generously served as co-sponsors of this training. That includes the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services, the State Unit on Aging. Again, a huge shout out to Antonio for organizing this just outstanding training, and then to Cynthia Braymeyer and all the staff at the State Unit on Aging for your ongoing support. AARP Nebraska, who is always generous in sponsoring events such as these, the UNO Department of Gerontology, and Legal Aid of Nebraska.